Dreamcatcher vlog. My name's Danielle and this is my little friend Cassiopeia, the Papillon. I am the Animal Behavior Specialist at Dreamcatcher's Animal Assisted Wellness Academy. I've come today to the vlog to answer a few of our most common questions about dogs. One of the most common comments or questions that we hear from professionals is that they aren't really looking to do really goal-directed animal-assisted therapy. They're just looking to do pet visitation, or maybe just even have their dog in the room during a session with a client. And so do they really need to get their dog trained? They need to go the extra mile to get certification. My answer to that is absolutely yes. Because the dog is not aware of what your goals are as the professional. Whether your plan is to have the dog just there in the room for some sort of environmental comfort, or whether you're going to do animal-assisted activities and include the dog in a more purposeful way, your goals as a professional are not known to the dog, but the dog does need to be set up to be desensitized to the environment, to be comfortable with the population that you're working with, and to be prepared to deal with what may come their way. In the example of a mental health professional, you may be putting your dog in a situation with an emotionally charged person, with somebody who may even exhibit inappropriate behavior, and you have to make sure that your dog is prepared to deal with that and that you have a plan of action to keep both the client and the dog safe in the event of unlikely incidents occurring. We want to make sure that everyone involved in animal-assisted interventions is safe and enjoying themselves, and too often the animals get overlooked as simply a tool being utilized to help people feel better, but their behavior is going unnoticed. The signals that they're giving off about feeling uncomfortable are going unnoticed, and not only is that unfair and unethical for the animal, but that also makes you a less effective professional using animal-assisted interventions. One example of that is Cassie. She's been a co-counselor for me in a variety of different settings, both with me just as a handler doing pet visitation, so that's going to hospitals and visiting people without any real clinical goal, and also as part of the Diamond model, where I was an animal handler working alongside a mental health professional with a client, and Cassie was the animal. Well, Cassie's been very well trained and desensitized for years. She continues her training every day with me. But in one particular incident, we were doing pet visitation in a hospital that had older patients with dementia. And we had a hospital staff there with us, but it wasn't to direct goals with the clients. It was just to make sure that everything was safe and comfortable for everyone involved. Well, one of the ladies that Cassie approached was on a couch, and she was so excited to see Cassie that she bent down to pet her, but simultaneously with the pet, she picked her up solely by Cassie's neck and onto her chest. So this is one of those things that obviously we don't plan to happen in AAI. It's not something that we ever want to happen in AAI, but it's one of those things that we need to be prepared for. And so in that case, Cassie had been desensitized and highly reinforced for all sorts of touching all over her body with a variety of different people. And so for her, she was actually fine. She gave some calming signals. Obviously, she was uncomfortable and tense during being picked up by her neck, but as soon as she was on that lady's chest, I reinforced her and she went to wanting to give kisses and interact and be comfortable again. So that was one of those unlikely experiences that we want to make sure that we're prepared for, and prepared for as a handler. If I hadn't had training, I could have become reactive to that situation, and that wouldn't have helped anybody. It would have stressed out Cassie and potentially made the situation more volatile. So it was important that I stayed calm and positive, and then obviously tried to safely remove Cassie from the situation as quickly as possible and debrief her, make sure she wasn't injured and that she emotionally was able to come back down to a place of calm. That's why it's so important to get training for yourself and your dog. So what kind of training should you do with your dog? This is another question that we get. Dog training is an unregulated field, so that means that anyone can call themselves a dog trainer, whether they have spent tens of thousands of dollars and hours on getting degrees, diplomas, certificates, or whether they have just, gone online and studied something for a few hours, or had dogs growing up and decided to call themselves a trainer. That doesn't mean that people with the most education are always going to be the most effective trainers, but when you're looking for a trainer, you want to make sure that they are doing their best to continue to educate themselves in science-based training. So when I say science-based training, which is something that you'll see on the Dreamcatcher website, that you'll see on most of our posts about dog training, that means that they're following the science of behaviorism and learning theory, that they're utilizing operant conditioning and reinforcements, and that they're trying to use the least aversive methods possible when it comes to training animals. This is so important, especially in animal-assisted interventions. It's how we should be training dogs in general, but in AAI, we're working with people, and often we're working with vulnerable people, and we do not want to be displaying aggressive behavior around that. I've seen people with their dogs and they have prong collars on them, which when you pull on it, it pinches into their neck. And it makes me question a little bit where our disconnect is between understanding that dogs are also sentient creatures and they can't even understand the language that we're speaking to them. So it's important that we communicate to them in a way that they understand and that we make it fun for them to work with us as our partners. The method of training that you see me using with Cassie right now is operant conditioning, and I'm using a clicker as a marker signal to tell her when she's done the exact correct behavior, and she has a history of reinforcement with that marker sound, so she expects to be rewarded after that. Sit. As soon as she assumes the sit position, I click and I reinforce. So I can ask her to lie down. You'll notice I'm also using hand signals along with my verbal. This is something that we have all of our students practice in classes. Dogs are far more attuned to body language than they are to verbalization. We're often overly verbal with our dogs, and even in this situation right now, I am verbalizing a lot, and very little of what I am saying is directed at my little co-presenter here. So it's helpful when I use hand signals. Additionally, it's great when you're working in an AAI setting or even with your own children at home. My kids often want to ask Cassie to do something and they don't have a strong reinforcement history with her, and they also aren't very clear in their speech when they're cueing. So she often doesn't respond, but I can be behind their back and cueing her to do a behavior, like sit, without actually saying the words to do so. And you can do the same thing in an AAI setting. We use this method of marker reward training when we're teaching new behaviors because it allows us to be less verbal with the dog. It's kind of like playing the hot and cold game without the cold. You're just clicking approximations towards the behavior that you want to develop. You're helping them sharpen those skills. They even use clicker training with people, something called tag teaching, teaching with acoustical guidance. It's very popular with gymnast athletes. If you can imagine a gymnast going around a bar over and over and all of a sudden she assumes the perfect position at one moment in time, it's hard for the coach to say, oh, that was perfect. By the time he got that sentence out, she was already around the bar. But if you had a marker signal, like a click, good girl, Cassie, then that actually feeds into her muscle memory. That gives her instant feedback about the exact moment that she was doing what the coach was looking for. And so it's the same with our animals. Another common question that we get is, where do you get your dog? Should you get a certain breed? Should you go to a rescue? Do you need to start from puppyhood, or can you get an adult? Oh, Cassie sees something in the distance. It's Echo! You can't see, but we have our horse Echo just about 20 feet away, and Cassie thinks he's pretty neat. Cassie! So that's an example of name attention. When I said Cassie's name, she immediately turned and looked at me. So, as mentioned in our previous fact blog, any dog, meaning any breed of dog, has the potential to be successful in animal-assisted interventions. The most important thing is making sure that if you're really planning to do AAI, that you consult a professional in animal behavior and that they help you screen the dog for its potential to work in that field. A dog in AAI needs to be able to be very tolerant around a wide variety of populations in a wide variety of settings. And obviously, depending on where you're going to work, if you're planning to work at Dreamcatcher solely, your dog needs to be good around large animals and farm life. If you're planning to work downtown in an office, that's a whole different set. But in general, we need dogs who are tolerant and able to acclimate to what happens around them. And mostly that means that they need to have a really good history of socialization to the world around them. Another frequently asked question that we get about dogs is, if you get your dog certified in AAI, can it go into public with you, or can you get it allowed into places where it might not otherwise be? So apartment buildings, for example. We get a lot of calls from people who want to get their dog certified in AAI so that they can bring it into an apartment building that wouldn't otherwise allow them to keep a pet. That is not what an AAI certification covers whatsoever. So in order to be allowed public access, you should have a service dog. And service dogs need to pass rigorous training and testing guidelines in order to gain the right to access all of these public areas, because they are put into all sorts of situations where both themselves and the people around them can be put at risk. So the training around that is intensive, and the handlers who get service dogs also need to be trained intensively on the ethical and appropriate way to handle their dogs within and around the public. AAI doesn't cover that. Obviously, we go into certain public places with our dogs, but that's when proper policies, procedures, and ethics have been developed in conjunction with the organization that you're going into. So if you're going into a school or a hospital, that facility should have an action plan in place for how the dog is going to get safely in without interacting with everyone in the environment on the way, how it's going to get out, where it's going to use the washroom, etc. That's all the sort of ethics and procedural training that you need in AAI. But the dog is not going to be trained to the extent to go through everything that a service dog goes through. Additionally, we don't want them to be. A service dog is a dog who is very task focused, very focused on their handler alone, and as we know, they shouldn't be interacting with other people, dogs, and animals when they're out and working with their handler with their vest on. That's not what we're looking for in an AAI dog. In fact, that would be fairly unsuccessful. If I took Cassie places to visit and she ignored everyone but me, she wouldn't be very good at her job in AAI. What we're looking for in AAI is a dog who absolutely responds to its handler, has a strong relationship with its handler. Cassie? Good girl. Those horses are just so fun. But they need to be interested in the other people around them. They need to want to engage. They need to want to go and have a snuggle and be pet and groomed and accept that attention from other people. And the goal with an AAI dog is that they not only, again, tolerate it, but that they actually enjoy it and want to seek that out. And so they're two very, very different things. Service dogs and AAI dogs are not one and the same. Emotional support animals. So that's another question that we get asked about, and Eileen again talked about that in our last fact blog, how there are some ethical issues with that. Emotional support animals has become a bit of a gray area and a hot topic lately in the news. Animals who people believe that they rely on heavily for their emotional well-being, and they want to be able to take these animals into public with them wherever they go in order to support, again, their emotional well-being ongoing. However, that's not fair to the animal if they have not been trained to the level of a service dog. If you truly need a dog with you in order to be able to function to a normal level within society, then you need to have a service dog. And there are psychiatric service dog organizations out there now. That is a thing. And so if you need a service dog, then you should absolutely look for one. But if you are able to function out in public, then you shouldn't take your dog with you unless, again, it's trained and certified as a service dog to be in those environments. When we have people wanting to bring their animals with them everywhere they go and they're just regular pets, even if they have AAI certification, again, that's unfair to the dog. Those dogs are being asked to work to an extreme level to tolerate an extreme amount in the environment and not have any of the preparation to ensure that they're safe. So while we at Dreamcatcher fully believe in the healing power of being with animals in nature and are big believers in the human-animal connection and the power that that has for us, we actually don't believe that animals should be put into situations that they're not prepared for, just to make sure that their handlers feel happy or satisfied that they're with them. Well, that's all of the frequently asked questions that are popping in my head at this moment. If you have any more, though, please feel free to comment on this post. You can send us a private message on Facebook, you can email us, or even call us. We'd love to hear the questions that you have rolling around in your mind, things that you would like us to answer, and we'll be sure to put those on our upcoming vlogs. So thank you so much, Cassie. She's having a grass snack now for joining us on this vlog adventure. And we'll see you next time.